Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Mindset Cafe. My name is Christian Williams. I'm going to be sitting in for Charlene Burke this morning. She has been traveling, or she's traveling back home. She was took a nice trip to Florida. So I'm sitting in for today, and yeah, we're sticking to the same idea. The success through a positive mental attitude. I don't know if she already had a blab scheduled for Friday. I'm pretty sure she did, but I couldn't find it because Blab acts funny sometimes. So anyway, let's get into it. As always, feel free to come in and comment um, on the chat, or just come on in and share your perspectives or your thoughts about what we're talking about. So today, what we are talking about is learning to see. I think this was an interesting chapter. When I looked at it, the primary question it starts off with is it time to have your mental vision checked? Right? We go to the eye doctor, or we get our tests every now and then when we go through our checks to see, do we still have 2020 or 2010 maybe when you were younger, right? And or are you starting to become nearsighted or farsighted? And so those are the common, weaknesses when it comes to physical sight, right? It's either nearsighted or farsighted. And as you see in this chapter, those are it's a similar weaknesses that we have in our mental visions too. So he explains here that a person who is mentally nearsighted is apt to overlook objects and possibilities that are distant. They pay only attention to problems that are immediately at hand and are blind to opportunities that could be his by thinking and planning in terms of the future. Now, uh, both of these are pretty common, so we'll get to them a little bit more. But if you think about that, I think nearsightedness to me is more common, maybe because I'm happy to be a farsighted person when I analyze myself after I was reading this chapter. Um, but a lot of people, especially in poverty or having to deal with immediacy, they don't have a lot of farsightedness, right? They just see, okay, this is the problem I got to deal with. It's like they're constantly putting out fires, putting out fires, putting out fires, and not having the farsightedness to start to make a plan. Okay, how can I avoid the fires in the first place? What can I do to set myself up in the long term? And I think I got my farsightedness, whatever, from chess, because when you play chess, you can't be nearsighted or you're always going to lose, right? You have to think three, four, five moves to get ahead. You actually have to think. Me, I always think about the end game. The first 10, once you learn how to play chess, the first 10 moves are kind of like automatic. It matters what the opening is, of course, but generally for on the almost any opening, there's a set amount of good moves, right, to put yourself in a position to win. Um, and then it becomes more abstract, and then you have to think about the long game, like what is my ultimate goal, which is to checkmate the king. And so you start to think in terms of that. And short-sighted people will think, okay, I have to protect this pawn. He threatened my pawn, or I have to protect this bishop. You threatened my bishop. When the whole point of me threatening the bishop is to get to your king. Is not. I don't care about the bishop. And so that's where I develop my own farsightedness. But I'm explaining it as farsightedness for a reason, because when it comes to farsightedness, he has here is a person that's apt to overlook possibilities that are right in front of him. He does not see the opportunities at hand. He sees only a dream world of the future, unrelated to the present. He wants to start at the top rather than move step by step, and does not recognize the only job you can start at the top is digging a hole. And that is true. And so these are two weaknesses, right? They can be strengths if you have the balance of the two. But if you just are, um, overcompensated in one area, as far as whether you're just focused on your nearsightedness or focused on your farsightedness, you're gonna you're gonna miss all kind of opportunities to succeed, right? So it's important to have that balance. So we have to develop it, right? And it's good. I like the way he describes it because it's good. We can start to look at ourselves, right? Say, okay, um, you know, when it comes to my actions and my plans, like do I make plans or do I more just action? Do I look into the future and see how this is going to affect things in the future, or do I always look to the future and don't really deal with things the way that they are? and miss the opportunity to actually get there. Like you said, the only place you start at on the top is digging a hole, right? If you really want to get somewhere, you have to start from right where you're at. And the farsighted person. Another thing with being farsighted, so is we tend to over get overwhelmed, right? Because all we see is the bigness of what we want, right? And all that it takes to achieve it. And so it's harder to get started because it seems like an impossibility, right? It seems so far away, it seems so big that how can I do that, right? But if you develop a little bit of a perspective and see, okay, really, you're not doing all that. No one ever does anything big in one bite. They all do it. Everybody accomplishes everything one step at a time, right? Um, so he says the kind of, and then he has a couple stories which I skipped over because I was just trying to mine all the points out of this. However, it's a skill, right? And he uses examples of a couple teachers here, and we need to learn how to develop the skill both in ourselves and seeing in others. Meaning, do we see? I'm editing my document while I'm talking, which is not good. Okay, so this kind of creative seeing we need to develop, and we can do it intentionally. We have that intention to see clearly mentally, right? Um, but it's a learned skill, and like any skill, it needs to be exercised. And this is the point here that he brings up: seeing another person's abilities, capabilities, and viewpoint. So this is to me another perspective. You got the far-sightedness, you got the short-sightedness, and then you also have how clearly are you seeing the other person, right? Because it's the same way. And a lot of times we have short sightedness when we look at other people. We just see them immediately. Maybe we have our first impressions, or we've seen them do one or two things, and we have our judgment, and there it is. They're in our eyes, they have no hopeful possibility of the future, and they just are the way they are, and that's what they have to offer. However, if you develop the skill in yourself, you can develop it when you're looking at other people and start to see their possibilities, their potential, their abilities that can be developed or strengthened, or their strengths that can be, tapped. So I think this is a very good one to really look at. I'm a coach, so I kind of do this in all the time, right? Is to look and see what are they not seeing in themselves, right? That can be grow and develop, and to highlight that and bring it out. But regardless of what your trade is, you go to work every day, you see your coworkers, and they're like, um, oh, this one lady, she's always gossiping and talking and whatever, right? So that's may seem like a negative, but it's also positive. She has leadership. If you could get her to focus on the positive and tap into that social skill, you can actually use it for the benefit of you and your company, right? So um, it if I was just short sighted, I would say, oh, she's just a gossip. I need to separate her from everybody and see how I can get her away from or out of the company or whatever. It's like that's a little bit short sighted, right? With a little bit of coaching, she could actually add a whole lot of value. So here he says, now everyone, both the great and the near great, have had a starting point. They weren't born brilliant and successful. As a matter of fact, some of our greatest men were regarded as quite stupid early in their lives. It was not until they grasped a positive mental attitude and learned to comprehend their capabilities and envision definite goals, they started to climb towards success. Now, here he points out we have a tendency to see what you want to see, what we want to see. Now, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Sometimes parents and teachers do the same thing, and so people are put into small boxes, right? Almost every great successful person, they've had people tell them they weren't going to be anything, they weren't smart enough, they didn't have enough intelligence or natural ability, and from Michael Jordan to everybody. He got cut from the team. You can't play ball. You're no good. Um, and the list goes on. I could say some names, but I can't think of their specific story, right? But they that was what the person basically just drew a short-sighted conclusion about that person. They didn't really have clear mental vision that we're talking about here. So the idea here that you tend to see what you want to see fits into that same box, whether it's our judgment about their test scores or a judgment about how they're acting in class, and or how they're acting around the office. And then we put them in that box and we don't let them out, right? We still only see what we want to see. Okay, great. Now I can see the chat here. Yeah, I'm sitting in for Charlene today. She'll be back on Monday. She's traveling back, and we wanted to make sure the show goes on, right? It's a great way to start the morning. So to hear does not necessarily imply attention or application. To listen always does. So throughout the Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, you are urged to listen to the message. This means to see how you can relate and assimilate the principle into your own life. All right. So, you hear me talking, but the idea is to listen, right? To really listen and to start to make the connections and see how you can assimilate this principle to your own life. So, uh, one of the great suggestions in this chapter says, when there's something you don't understand, ask yourself why. Look at it more closely, and you may make a great discovery. So here they use the example of was it Newton, right? Why does the apple fall to the ground, right? He asks questions. Most great scientists, inventors, how can we do this better? What is another way to do this? This is the creative visual, scene, right? It's what does that mean, or how does that work? And so, or why is it that way? I ask that question a lot. Why? Why is it the way it is? Like, why do people think the way they do? Why do people act the way they do? Why does this person think this about that person? So as you can tell, I had generated an interest in psychology because I wanted to understand people and I wanted to know why people behaved the way they did, right? And which of course led me to personal development and coaching, etc. However, I studied a lot, right? And you do make all kinds of discoveries. And when you understand other people, you understand yourself because we're all the same. Well, that's what you will eventually discover if you have such an interest in people. You will realize that underneath all the surface differences that we think that we have, we're all very, very much alike in mind, even, we have made different choices. However, our motivations are all basically the same, right? We want to enjoy life. We want it to be better. We want to be happy, right? We want love and connection, right? So anyway, those are some of the things that I learned. But however, let's come back to the book and this guy named, let's see, Mikimoto. He was a Japanese man back in the 1800s, and he was taught by a samurai. And before he went through the story, he put this quote out here, which I think really exemplifies it. And so I use that word because the quote is: "Exemplification of true faith consists of acts of kindness and love for one's fellow man, not merely formal prayers uttered by rote." I really, really like that. Charlene's always talking about compassion is an action word. And even when you think about what's happening right now in politics, which I don't like to talk about, but I will anyway. Some people in Congress said, "Oh, we're not going to do this moment of silence anymore. We need to actually debate and talk about what we're going to do about the situation," referring to the Orlando shootings and the other mass shootings. They want action instead of moments of silence, and then they change this topic and don't talk about it anymore. And so that kind of goes back to, like Charlene was saying, with the compassion is the action. It's more than just, okay, I'm going to pray and then don't do anything. we got to do something. I was laughing. I think it's maybe Jim Gallagher, or I listen to comedy all the time, but one of these comedians. No, it wasn't Jim. It was somebody else. I think it was Adrian Spears or something like that. Adrian Spears. He says like, "Don't tell me your thoughts are with me. I don't want your thoughts with me. I want you to do something. I want you to make me a sandwich, right?" And so, anyway, it's an action that our faith is exemplified. So he starts his story with that quote, and basically, what he did, Mikimoto, he was, he's a poor guy, whatever, lived in the village, and he became curious about life, so he went to school. And in the university, one of his professors told him that oyster pearls come from, something on that, like a grain of sand gets into their shell, and it irritates them, so they create this pearl around it. And so he started to ask the questions, right? He wanted to, like these questions: how do I apply this? What does that mean? If I were to introduce another object into the oyster myself, could I force the oyster to make pearls? So as we all know, or if you don't, if you can, draw two and two together, therefore we have a pearl industry because this guy asked the question, right? And he performed the action. He became a doer with the, positive mental attitude and philosophy of action. Mikimoto became a doer. He developed a habit of converting ideas into reality. The truth is, knowledge doesn't make you successful, but application of knowledge will. Action. I do a series of blabs, and I got the best feedback. Me and Aaron up there, Mr. Millionaire's Dream, and he said, from one of our audience members, he said, what I really liked about you guys is, you give all this, great or, good knowledge and everything, but your focus is on action, right? And doing and applying it, right? And that's really where the goal lies. First in the question, finding out curiosity, right? Scientific curiosity of how can things be different, or can I make how would I want things to be? And then the application of knowledge into action. Many of the ideas which come to us as we learn to see with fresh eyes will strike others as bold, right? When you start to look at things with this new mental clarity, right? And ask those kinds of questions. So a good way to do that is to ask questions. So especially if you recognize, okay, I'm a far-sighted person. I always see the big dream, the big goal, and I'm not really paying attention to the opportunities right in front of me. Is ask those kind of questions. So this is how I did it. This is how I treated myself, so to speak. And I do the same thing with my clients. Is that okay? You can tell from a series of questions, how their mind is working, right? And generally, people do see one or the two ways, right? And of course, with goal setting, you ask for short and long term goals, but from their actions, you can tell they're just completely focused on the big vision and not taking advantage of what's happening right in front of you, right? And so that's what you can ask. Okay, what can I do today? What's my next best move, right? What is already present in my reality that is going to move me forward in this goal, right? Who, a lot of times we're like, oh, I need to get in touch with, here comes Aaron calling in. We think about what we're trying to accomplish and the people who would, contribute to it. Oh, I need to get Michael Hyatt, or I need to get, Bill Barron or somebody, one of these big names or somebody to collaborate with, because we have this great. Well, think about who's already connected to you. More than likely, there is already somebody who's connected to you who will help move your vision forward. And so look a little closer. If you happen to be one of those far-sighted people, start to ask those kind of questions. Hey, Aaron, how you doing?
Doing good, Christian. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Looks like you got a nice sunrise going on there.
Yeah, it's starting up here at 5:30 here in the West Coast. I just wanted to jump in because it's making a lot of sense, as far as nearsightedness and farsightedness. I look at, how I spin things to the corporate world, and, I look at that as big picture, or, the overview, the top level view. And then you have your focused, your workers are focused on the daily tasks. But what you're saying, a lot of the self-help, a lot of the internalization, a lot of the coaching says, you got to see them both. Especially when you're you're leader of a project, you not only have to see the big vision, but you have to understand each detail that needs to be done. And that can be tricky, because a lot of people don't want to focus, like you're saying. They either focus on the big picture, they focus on that farsightedness, and they see the whole everything. Mm-hmm. And they're having trouble getting down to the smallest little thing, the details, the nearsightedness that is necessary to get the task done, that build up to that big picture. So yeah, that's just a little corporate spin on this mindset thing.
Yeah, and thinking about things from that viewpoint, and thinking about your strengths, a lot of times the person in the CEO position, or upper level management, that is their strength, is the farsightedness, and you can be intentional about it, right? Okay, I see big picture. However, the on the ground people need to be nearsighted. We give them the immediate goal, right? If you think about, okay, your middle level management, right? You say, okay, these are the objectives that we need to accomplish, right? And so some of them, you may want to have a little more balanced view, but you can really, through your interview process, actually, you can see where people can see, right? Like how they see the world, and how they, how they engage with it, and then properly place them according to their strengths that they already have. Now, I agree, you need to develop both. You have to have both, especially when you have situations arise, you need to deal with things immediately. Get the people on board who are naturally that way. But especially when you're a solopreneur, or you are the leader yourself, like you said, you do have to have that, develop both ways of seeing and recognize, hey, this is an instance, or this is a situation, or this is I need to look at things from both perspectives. Especially when you're making a major decision, let me look at the long term, let me look at the short term, let me look at the midterm. And the great thing about being a leader is you've got other people, right? Let me get some other perspectives to help me see more clearly as well.
Oh, that's the outside perspective. that is a big part of, for me anyway, that helped me learn, to use both sides of that spectrum. Because a lot of times you don't recognize it. I've been in leadership positions, working with corporate, working with executives, and a lot of times they don't see it. They're so focused on that big picture view, and a lot of times they are surrounded by people that have those other skill sets, mm-hmm. which brings it all together. But when we're talking about mindset, we're talking about not necessarily business, but we're talking about life too. A lot of situations in life, relationships, family, kids, coworkers, partners in businesses. And you can't always find those people in a project, especially when you're dealing with internal things. So getting an outside perspective, like a coach or like a business leader will have middle management, or, lead positions in different areas doing those specific tasks. But getting that vision, learning to practice that vision, one of the first things you got to do is get an outside perspective, whether you're stepping outside of your project and kind of looking over all the details in the planning phases, or whether you're getting a coach's feedback, or whether you're getting middle management feedback. That outside perspective that's what's going to help you see some of these things you're missing.
Yeah. With that being said, I like to have another person's perspective, especially if from this conversation you start to see, okay, I'm a short-sighted person, right? Because I'll explain a little bit more of some of the pitfalls and dangers or whatever of being a far-sighted person. Um, uh, or, I mean, I've had circumstances, where I was short sighted. Like, and I think this is almost everybody has had this situation. If you're human, is when when your ego or your emotions get involved, when you feel offended, right, and you want to win this fight, right. However, you're forgetting the war, right? It's kind of like no, and I mean, we've seen it in the movies as well. It's like, oh, the general gets, I'm going to keep throwing bodies at this situation, at this problem, that is so immediate, right? But however, you weaken yourself for the long term battle. Like I was saying with chess, and it was like, oh no, I'm gonna lose a pawn. No, I won't lose that pawn. So you start throwing all your soldiers to defend this pawn. However, you're not thinking of the long game. You're not thinking of, okay, I saved the pawn, but I sacrificed I lost my knight. And now you're like, okay, you're going to lose, especially unless you find a way to recoup that loss, right? And so a lot of times we get caught up in the immediacy of a quibble, a little pet peeve or something that doesn't really impact anything in the long term. However, our little ego got irritated, and we want to win this specific battle, And so I think that's one way that I even recognize that, okay, that's definitely a short-sighted view. And we talked about it, I think it was Monday when we were talking about the mindfulness aspect, about saying, okay, when you start to react, and you can tell when you're reacting, to me, because your emotions seem to be moving faster than you are, right? And so, or your mind is, right? And so to me, that's the time to say, okay, hold up. Unless it's a good emotion, happiness, joy, passion, excitement, fine, but if it's a negative one, okay, that's when you need to push the mindfulness button, so to speak, say, okay, hold up, let me draw back for a second and get a bigger view about what's actually going on.
Yeah, my mindfulness, that's a big part of that, for me anyway. Being able to switch from the top level farsightedness to the close level focused in nearsightedness. Being mindful. When I'm in a planning session, we're planning out top level things. We have to be mindful of obstacles that we're aware of. And so those obstacles we're aware of usually require specific tasks or specific things to be done to overcome those. So it takes a mindfulness, a conscious awareness that, yes, these big picture ideas are going to have some small level tasks. And so you have to, for me, I have to consciously switch over to that nearsightedness, to start taking that magnifying glass and really taking a close look at some of these ideas, some of these plans that we're making in the strategy phases, to find out the details of what specific actions need to be done. Because we can sit in a planning session all day long and talk about how we want to, do a backlink campaign to get natural ranking, to do a keyword campaign to get some SEO and hashtags getting out there. But then you have to focus in on the specific, what keywords, where are we going to put our hashtags? Where are we going to post our articles? And that's just one thing that, you can take from the top level to some of these more specifics, especially when you're working with a team. Mm-hmm. You say, okay, this all needs to be done, this task list. Well, you go down a little bit further. You start getting that narrow-minded or that nearsighted or that focused vision, that close-up look at those tasks, those close-up looks at those peoples, and say, oh, this person would be great for this, that, the other task. This person would be great to fill in those tasks. So that's just kind of a project spin on this. It's where you're looking at tasks, big picture, and then you're also looking at people, as far as who can manage those focused nearsighted tasks, who's already got those skill sets on our team.
I just saw a picture in my head of how this kind of looks. So, because I'm not any of these as far as physical, right? Like physically, I've been blessed to see clearly all my life, and I intended to continue that way, right? Excuse me, but I do photography and videography and whatnot, and so it has to do with resolution. If you have you can have a big picture. Like you can take, if you take a picture with like one of my cameras and I have the quality kind of lower so I can take more pictures or whatever. And I take a big picture, like a landscape picture. And I go back to my computer and I say, okay, that's a beautiful landscape, but I want to see this one piece over there by the tree. And so I'll crop it and I'll zoom in. However, what happens is because the resolution is low, it'll pixelate, it'll get blurry. It won't really look clear as I, with my own sight, as I zoom into something, I can still see the detail of it. Right. And so it kind of goes to what you're saying. Okay, I have this big picture, right? I have this, okay, I want to get 1,000 people to this website, whatever. Okay, that's great. But what is the detail? What is the articles that we're writing? What is the names? What are the steps to get to this, point, right? And that's kind of like the zoom in, the resolution, and that's how you can kind of tell when you're thinking about these things, kind of how your mind works, right? And or not really how your mind works, but where the missing gaps are. I always do this when I'm planning, and I see, okay, how do you get from here to there, right? And of course, you're not always going to have all the first, the answers when you first come up with a vision, and that shouldn't deter you. However, that should motivate you to continue to look, right? To continue, because it's there. The path is there. Sometimes you have to find it. Like you said, you have to focus in. You have to fine tune your ideas and your strategies until you can actually clearly see the step by step to that process. And those two things I think really help you is from the beginning, the focus helps you start to take action. Because I don't believe you have to have a clear view from beginning to end before you start, right? I believe actually when you start, then that path starts to become even more clearer because you're on the ground, right? You can actually start to see, okay, I can see that this is what I have to do next, and I'm gonna continue moving and getting clarity in that way. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm really like. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm really enjoying the conversation. I think so much of what I'm hearing you saying and what I'm picking up from it too myself is I think that sometimes people see things differently. They have different perspectives, nearsighted, farsighted, seeing it from this angle. And it just really encourages collaboration because I may have a big picture view and not have it in my head how it's going to like all play out. But I don't necessarily need that all in my head because that's why we have Aaron, and that's why we have Charlene, and that's why we have Fraser, and that's why we have these different people. It's like whenever it's something so big that it's bigger than you, that I feel like that's a sign that you're supposed to be collaborating. You're supposed to have different visions and different minds at the table. And I love what you said when you were saying, like, you don't have to have it all figured out to start.
Right.
I like the idea of having a vision, like, what you want the completion product to be, but it doesn't mean that you have to know every single step. Somebody else might be in charge of that. I think sometimes though we get to points where we sometimes judge or criticize people's different views because maybe they can only see this part or maybe I can only see this part, but it's okay because like if we're all building a car and all I know how to do is put on the wheel, then let me play my role in putting on the wheel and you play your role in putting on the engine. And I don't have to judge that you don't know how to put on the wheel and you don't have to judge that I don't know how to put on the engine.
Right.
Because we're collaborating it's just really about, do we agree that we want this finished product? Yes. All right. Then let's like put our visions together, put our perspectives together, and let's like grow together. Right. One of my favorite African proverbs is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
I like that.
That is totally how I believe it too. Because when you're by yourself, I'm making a website. I don't need to talk with my partners about, is this graphic good? Is this word choice good? And I can bang out a website pretty quickly. I have seen Christian do it too, and it's pretty quickly. But also like with writing, you want to get different eyes on it to get some of those details that maybe you don't see because you're in your own mind, and we're kind of spinning from the far-sighted, nearsighted to a different perspective, because everyone's going to be seeing from a different perspective, maybe near, maybe far, maybe a combination. But I really do think that perspective is what's going to bring things together. Like Fraser's saying, you let the universe fill in the details, and that kind of makes sense, because as you're on the path, the universe is going to see you're on the path. That next step is going to be clearer. You may not see that one step until you're on the path. All you see is, I'm going to get to Las Vegas. You don't see that you got to go through LA. You don't see that there's a traffic jam here. You have to switch your route. The universe will take care of that, because you're going. You have that big vision. You're following that vision. The small parts will come into focus as you get close enough.
Mm-hmm. I like that, and I like to put the two thoughts together. Often the universe will give you another perspective from somebody else, right? Like, that's how you're going to get the detail to fill it in, because like Rasheem said, we generally have one strength, right? It's good to develop the others, but honestly, it's quicker, it's more expedient when you learn how to cooperate, right? With other people, like you said, I'm all about greatness, right? And really, there's no greatness achieved alone. I really love that proverb. I had to type it out because I'm going to steal it. But it's great, it made me think about what Aaron's saying, right? So, like, okay, you're writing a book. You wrote a book, great. Now, if you want to put it out there, you can go ahead and put it out there, but more likely it's going to have all kind of mistakes in it, right? Because you can only see from your own perspective. Right. And from your perspective, it's great. It's fine. It says everything you need to say clearly to your mind. However, you have another mind, you have another set of eyes to see it, and who can see it clearly, your book is going to be more successful, right? It's going to actually have more traction because people can actually understand it. You're not going to have all kind of, typos and et cetera. And that's just like a small example. But the same thing with the website. I designed a website before I go live. I asked the person to go look at it. I asked the people to look at it. There's a typo here, or why is this like that? Doesn't make any sense, right? I completely agree. I'm one that's definitely all for cooperation, right, and working together. And I think that's a skill, that we need to develop, right? Is to me, the reason I said you need to develop is the first thing you said is not get offended because people don't see things the way you do. And right. I think that's a common way of being that we have. We judge other people for not seeing things the way we do, and actually the value of diversity comes in that difference of perspective.
Absolutely.
All right. So go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think in addition to not judging, having the level of self-awareness where you can seek out that too. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, one of the things that I have seen happen so many times is, especially like when we get in roles of like leadership. So we typically see things from a bird's eye view. We have a vision, and we're up here. So we're in like, leadership positions and that sort of thing. And nothing brings up more of your insecurity than when you're doing something in a leadership role, or you're about to do something really big. Like, if you ever want all of your stuff brought to the surface, take on something huge and take on a leadership role. But what I see happening when some people's things are brought up too is they tend to, and this is what I think, I'm just going to use the words good and bad. This is what I think, I'll say this. This is what I think less than awesome leaders do. Less than awesome leaders hire weaker versions of themselves, right? This person has all of these things in common with me, but they can't they're not going to challenge me. They don't have it to the degree. And I just want to be around people all the time who think like me and going to do exactly, what I want. But really good leaders not only appreciate difference, but they seek out stronger versions of who they are not, instead of hiring weaker versions of who they are. So not only do I appreciate Aaron's different point of view, I'm going to purposely go and say, like, after doing a self-eval, I'm not really strong in this area. I need somebody who's stronger in an area where I'm weak. And I think that could be a challenge where we're kind of like, you know, in terms of like egos, we have to really like put our egos in check and get more people who are stronger versions of who we are not instead of weaker versions of who we are.
Yeah, I like that, and that's true. It's like, okay, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna just seek consistent validation, like you said, from people who are below you, who are the same, basically, the yes man. Let me just go get a bunch of yes men, and we can walk around with the emperor's new clothes. Walk around naked, and everyone tells him he looks beautiful, right? Or are you really going to build something worthy of greatness by getting alternate views? I was looking at what's her name here? Did she step out? I keep on forgetting her name. Cindy's comments here about different views, right? Using different views in photography to see differently. But yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, like you said, it's you have to do it intentionally, because our natural tendency seems to be to get just everyone who agrees with you. If you look at your circle of friends, majority of the time it's just going to be people who have similar viewpoints and all agree with you. However, if you're in business or if you're really trying to build something of a substantial nature where you're going to want to include other people other than yourself, as far as different perspectives rather than yourselves, you're going to want to have different people in your circle of advisors as well. So, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm kind of thinking here too, just because of who I am, I've always been kind of an outlier, when they do the statistical, I'm the outlier. I was raised in a town with 300 people. Most people aren't, so there's lots of different things where an outlier like myself sees things really quite differently. And what Rasheem's saying, I may be on one spectrum of an outlier, and there may be another spectrum of an outlier. So I kind of hear him saying, if I seek out that other person, that other outlier, totally opposite of me or totally different perspective, totally different background, that's going to give me, an understanding. That's going to give me a glimpse into the other side. That's going to, let me see, it's going to teach me to see these different perspectives, these different angles, these different focuses. And I think that's just super powerful. I mean, to be able to see from your own perspective is huge, but to be able to see from someone else's perspective is just going to give you that much more broader and deeper knowledge and understanding and ability to apply this knowledge and understanding, by taking that time to seek out different vision, seek out a different way to see.
So do you think, so I'll ask both of you guys, since I shared, what do you think you are as far as the strength? Do you think you're more of a, focus on the detail of the present, or more of a big picture future kind of strength as far as your seeing ability, so to speak?
Our superpower.
I would have to say that my ability is flexibility. I can go midstream from top vision to low vision. It's kind of like, I guess, when my singing, I can sing at a really low tone. I can hit a high note, and I can switch voices in the midstream of a song, which is kind of fun for me, sometimes annoying for my friends. But I think I developed that. I think I was originally a big picture person. I think I was originally a farsighted person, to where I always looked at everything from the top level. Always stood back, took a look, and really had a hard time focusing in on details and focusing on the short-sightedness. And I actually had to really focus and build that strength to be able to say, okay, this is my big vision picture, but let's get it down to each individual little task. So I really had to work on that nearsightedness. And that's what made my flexibility a strength at this point in time.
Interesting.
I think I'm a big picture person that is able to connect dots. And so I can have a big vision picture that's like something that's like 10 years down the road. And 1 week into the 10 years, I can see how a relationship or how me doing something in that moment is going to contribute toward that later on. So it's like, I know that I want to get to the land of Oz, right? But I also know that this person, I should probably bring this person with me, and I should probably check out this. And I'm, I am a big picture person, but I also I'm aware in the journey. I'm aware, I'm collecting information, I'm building, and I feel like I'm growing in the journey to get to the final destination. Final destination.
Those movies, oh my goodness. So what I heard in both of these descriptions, which is I think is the one of the great lessons of this talk, is okay. It's great to have this great big vision and to be aware and to be inspired by this, this goal that is huge, that's going to, change so many lives or improve your life in some dramatic way. However, when you start on the journey and start moving, you have to get to the focus of what I need right now to keep moving, right? And what also happens is the universe or whatever you believe in begins to bring things and people into your awareness that will assist you, right? And so that's when you need that nearsightedness. I think it's developed through action, right? I believe we all get inspired by a big goal, right? By whether it's I fit into my old clothes, I'm at the bathing suit, or I'm running, I'm playing with my kids, I'm healthy, I'm excited, right? And we're inspired to action. Right. And so once you start taking that action, then you get the on the ground clarity. Right. And so to me, either is a good one. However, in coaching for me, it's easy for me to, because I see the big picture. Right. So it's easy for me to inspire the client or whatever with the big picture vision. Then the next step is to keep them motivated with that big picture, with the steps that come along the way. So Cindy says, just like we all have different skills, we see things in life differently. If we all saw things the same way, we wouldn't need teams. We need visionaries who see the end result and those who can see the step-by-step details to get it accomplished. If we saw the same way, we wouldn't need different skill sets. If we all saw the same way, we wouldn't get burned out we would get burned out seeing all the details. Also, there would be nothing to look forward to. Hope that makes sense. Yes, it makes sense. If we all saw things the same way, there'd only be one of us. If you think about it in a philosophical way, like what is our purpose for being? I believe one of our purposes for being is we all have different perspectives. It's how God sees himself in a different perspective. Anyway, not to get too deep on that. Fraser says, Rashim said in response, I think that's why I always preferred the Avengers to Superman. Yes, right? Yeah. Like, who's this one guy who's got to solve all the problems, right?
And
one little piece of kryptonite. The whole super family done.
Right. And I think the thing, too, with the Avengers is you have people, even down to the level of, like Black Widow. She doesn't have a superpower, but she's a valuable part of the team. Mm-hmm. And even, Stark as Stark as Iron Man, all of these people have different strengths and they're all valuable parts of the team and you cannot get the job done. That's why I love that concept a little bit better than Superman.
Yeah. I like it, like you said, because you got some superpower people and you got some just normal people, right? And it's the perspective that makes them so valuable to the team. They see the detail, like you said, the Black Widow, she sees the detail of infiltration and manipulation. And, then you have the Hawkeye guy who sees the big picture, right? And he kind of watches over what's going on. I can go through it because I do love the Avengers as well. But yeah, it's like you need those. It's enjoyable too. It's funner, right? The achievement is more, I feel happier when the Avengers win than when Superman wins, right? Because, he just did it by himself. Yeah, he's got all these superpowers. Great. However, this team had to get together, especially the last Avengers. they had to kind of deal with their darkness as well, right?
Yeah.
That this thing, you know, drew out of them, and they had to find a way to come back together again and work together. And I think it's a metaphor. You know, there's a book. I was on the board of directors of the CDC in Boston, and before I left, they started using this book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Now, it's a very great book. I've heard a lot about it, and of course, I had to, you know, read it or act like I was reading it. But anyway, the point is, they had to read it and learn from it. And it makes you think about it, because what it really talks about is basically what are the internal sort of hindrances that we generally have that stop us from effectively working together, right? And it brought out the main 5 ones that you know, stop a team from working together effectively. And a lot of it is just from lack of awareness of the differences of perspective and appreciation of those differences. You know, because like you said, I think a lot of times when someone sees things something different in a different way, we tend to paint them as wrong, right? And therefore we are right, and we have to prove ourselves as right. I wrote this article called "The Game of Right," and it comes from also my experience with this landmark education program. And that's what we do generally. We want to prove ourselves right, and we'll do it at any cost. I mean, people die every day to be right, regardless of whether you know, they're technically right or wrong. If I believe in this, you know, I'm going to go, you know, you see it in religious wars, you see it in all kind of different family arguments where they're holding on to bitterness or whatever, or not speaking to each other over years and years because they want to be right about something really small, right? So I think if you can let go of that need to be right, you know, and just say, okay, everyone has a different perspective. Let me see and appreciate the perspective, right? You don't have to accept it. You don't have to take it else on as your own, because that's not the point, right? The point is just to allow things, you know, allow people to be who they are, right? And like Aaron said, you become big. In my view, when you do this, you become bigger, right? Because our perspective is this big, right? As far as we can see, you know, our 360 grade. But you take that, multiply it by 2, multiply it by 5, right? And to me, what happens is it increases exponentially, right? Or logarithmically with each person, each new perspective that you have. This is what goes behind the idea of mastermind that Napoleon Hill talks about a lot. Is it's not only you get 2 perspectives, it's kind of like you get 3 now. You get my perspective, your perspective, then a combination of the 2, right? And that's like the 3rd. That's where kind of like this idea of spirit comes in, right? Because when you're working in harmony, when 2 or more people are gathered together in harmony, right? And so it's kind of like that harmony creates another perspective that is greater than the 2 independently. Okay.
I was kind of thinking, Christian. I mean, the 3 of us here in this room, you know, we're kind of big picture thinkers. I think that actually a lot of the early adopters here on Blab can really relate to the big picture thinking. But I've helped a lot of people go from that little picture into seeing that big picture. You know, they're caught up in, you know, the daily grind. I got to get to work to get the bills, to get it paid, so I can have a house, so I can get a shower, get some clothes, so I can get to work, so I can go pay my bills. You know, then they're stuck in this task, you know, small picture, task-oriented thinking. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sometimes what I'll do is, I'll shake it up. I'll disrupt it. I'll be like, okay, have you looked at it from here? Have you looked at it from there? Let's step back from this. Kind of what Fraser's saying, you know, a dream is written down to goal split into action steps as a plan. And each step means you're making your dream a reality. And a lot of people don't realize that. They're just stuck in that action step of taking that next step, that next action to survive. They're in that survival mode. Mm-hmm. Whether they haven't had anybody come by and explain to them about big vision, whether they haven't taken those difficult inward looks, you know, and saying, hey, I should look at this place that's causing me problems, you know, because that's what people tend to do. They're like, oh, this is my problem. Let me push it away. That doesn't solve anything. You have to say, oh, this is causing me pain, discomfort. What is it? And focus in on it so you can understand it. You have to do that why. And So a lot of the times what I'm doing in business, in work, in projects, when we're doing projects, or even friends or acquaintances, people that I decide to help, I'm actually considered taking on some coaching clients, but that's in the future. I always trying to get them, if they're stuck in that task-oriented short-sightedness, I need to get to work so I can feed my bills, so I can feed my kids. They're kind of stuck in that loop. And, getting them to look at that bigger vision and see where those everyday steps are leading them can sometimes, just make that tiny little adjustment to where I'm focusing on today to I'm focusing on tomorrow to I'm focusing on today and tomorrow, but I have this vision of the future. So I know that this little step of what I'm seeing today and this little action that I'm doing tomorrow is actually on my path to that big future. What I see a lot of people doing is they're afraid. They're so afraid to step back out of that daily grind that they don't even see where they're going. Mm-hmm. They don't even have, the idea to set a goal for themselves, to set this big, huge, giant dream that every step now is going to be leading towards that, rather than leading towards this circle of, I got to feed myself, I got to pay my bills, I got to get to work, I got to feed myself, and it can be hard to loop out of that without outside perspective, outside that.
That's so, I think that is so spot on, Aaron, because I feel like even with us that have the bigger vision, I think it's easy for us to get, I guess you could say, caught up in the rigmarole of life, or get caught up and get off of that, right? So we have these big goals, but then, okay, we got bills, and we have kids, or we have this responsibility. And I think one of the things of that is important in connecting with people who are going to build you up and support you, and you're working towards a similar vision, is that they can remind you of what the vision is. In addition to what Fraser says, in terms of writing it down, I have this little green book, and it has all type of stuff on it. But the main thing it says, did you work on your dreams today? And it's an everyday reminder for me. And it's my 2016 book. So I have 4 things that are just my main goals for this year. And then within those main goals for this year, I wrote down specifically critical success factors. I don't know if anybody in here program management people, but basically what am I going to know at the midpoint that I'm getting closer to that? And then even chopped it down from that. What can I do a little bit of every single day that's going to feed into that big vision? And I feel like I have to write that down, because if not, I could easily get caught up. I got to feed the kids. I got to do the laundry. I got to go grocery shopping. I got to, all of those things. But then I'll go back to this book and I'll be like, did I read it? One of the things that I could do each day, did I read an article on this topic today? Did I listen to an audiobook or something like this or around that today? Did I, those sort of things. But I think that what you're saying, Aaron, is so for real. And it's even for real with people who I feel like are big vision. We have to do these things to stay on that, because there's so many things in our circumstance that can tell us that vision isn't possible. And there's so many conditions around us. And also even with marketing and messages and all of these other messages, marketing is really just basically a competition for your attention. So if you have a vision and you're trying to focus on it, and then you have all of these other things competing for your attention, it's so easy to get off of that. And I feel like we have to be just as intentional as those marketers, as CNN is, as everybody is getting our attention. We have to be intentional about keeping our attention on what we say our goal is going to be. So spot on, Aaron.
Yeah, I also wanted to discuss Fraser's. I'm kind of confused on create your done list and not a to-do list.
I guess he's saying after you done it, then you write it down.
Well, I have a problem. I can't remember more than 3 things on a grocery list. So I can get milk, eggs, and bread. But anything longer, I need a list of to get. And the same thing goes with, business plans. When I sit down and think about an idea or a vision that I have, I write down the tasks. I write down this needs to be done, that needs to be done. Kind of like a grocery list or a shopping list. When I go out to go to Home Depot, to go to the grocery store, to go to whatever stores, I have a list, and I know I'm going to go down and I'm going to mark them off as I get them done. I think that's what Fraser's saying, you know, is every day if you have a list of things that you know you're going to knock them down, that's tracking your dream. That's tracking your progress. That's making progress. You know, and I look at, you know, some higher, bigger end, you know, I've done some migrations, you know, for data centers, and there's pretty long list of things that need to be done, and you have to do each one. And sometimes you have to do them in an order, and basically it is a done list. I mean, because you get there in the morning, you get the assignment, oh, migrate, you know, box this, or whoever client, they're moving to a different rack or moving to a different server. You have to do certain things. You have to create a to-do list, but by the end of the day, it's a done list. And kind of the same thing with the projects. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking too, Fraser, is a to-do list. People will put it off. People will put it off. I do have a put off list. You know, this is kind of a longer term, big list that needs certain things to be done before I can check those off. And I realize that. But every day I have a do list, which needs to be done. If I don't get it done this day, it does go on to the next day. So yeah, I mean, I understand the idea of being overwhelmed too with a big giant task list, because I've looked at some of my projects and seen the task list on them, and yeah, there's several pages of tasks that need to be done, and it can be overwhelming if you're having that short-sightedness, that you're saying, oh, today I need to get something and have it all done. Some of these bigger things, you got to realize I need to chip at it every day. I need to wake up and say, okay, I have 5 tasks that I want to get done towards this goal. And the next day you're going to have 5 more. And the next day you're going to have 5 more. Having that farsightedness, that big picture vision, helps me to understand that, yeah, today's done list is today's list. Tomorrow's is tomorrow's. And I have to do today, tomorrow, and the next day if I want Friday to have my project done.
I think, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to comment on Ola's comment here. She says, Gary Vaynerchuk says, be your own media company. What would be on the list to help grow you if you had the top media company working on you? I really like that. I like the idea of, you know, we have to be our own media company. We have to have our own message, right? You know, what is our process message? What are we wanting the people to think or do? You know, especially think about us, or do to contribute to our vision, or us to contribute to theirs. Cindy says, I think we both need lists to do and done so that we see what we need to do and see how far we have come during those times when we do not feel accomplished. I think that's great. I mean, I think to-do lists or done lists, however you want to word it, are both share the same utility. Because when you have a to-do list and you go back and look that you've done it, that gives you a sense of accomplishment, and it also helps you to move things to the next day. However, one thing I wanted to add while I was listening to everybody is you don't put too much on it. I mean, and if you do, the next day, don't beat yourself up for not doing all 100 things. You know, we're not, you know, that allows you to see, okay, it's really more about priority. When you see that you're not getting things done, now you have to clarify what your top priorities are and put those at the top of the list. Now, everything else can kind of get done or not according to how much time you have left. But start with the highest priority thing, or the highest mentally challenging thing early in the morning, because you're fresh. You can get that done and feel good about what you get done. You move whatever doesn't get done to the next day and order into a priority again. And one thing that you'll notice, some things just keep moving from day to day to day. Now, if that happens, and you can start to rethink whether you really want to do it, right? Whether it's really a priority. If it is, put it at the top. If it's not, don't even put it on the list. You can come back to it when you actually have, you know, the time and energy to focus on that, or, when you've cleared up some of your other priorities, or start thinking about delegating. There's so many different things you can do, but if it keeps moving from day to day to day, look into it, see why, what is the reason. If either it's not important enough to you, or you have some kind of internal block that's not letting you do it, right? And you need to understand what that is, and let me address that. Those some thoughts there.
No, I love that. I think another thing too, in terms of lists, because I'm a lover of lists, I am a lover of planning. But one of the things that I've added that helped me not to get like all bogged down is I also write to be lists, because we're not human doings, we're human beings. So I'll write to be happy, to be, excited, to dance. And also, in addition to writing to be lists, I write a list of what I'm not going to do. Like, I am not doing this today, or I'm not doing this from this time period to this time period, because the more I say no, the more it gives my yes integrity. So I think in just thinking to help us not to just think of ourselves as like producers who just got to get stuff done. We're human beings who have to laugh. Like, laughing and dancing is just as important as whatever else is on my list. And if I go through a whole day and I'm not dancing or laughing or eating something I think is delicious, or, if I'm not feeding if I'm not feeding that aspect of me, then that's like detrimental to me, because I am not a machine, right? We are not machines. So I think that type of list, a to-be list, is important, as well as what are you not going to do? Like, I got to say no to that. I'm not going to be on social media from this time to this time. I am not going to do that. And I think it makes the more we say no, it makes our yes that much more stronger.
That is so powerful, Rasheem. I mean, I've kind of been doing that. I haven't really thought about it, though. I haven't really thought that this is what I'm doing. I'm making a no list, but I've kind of been doing that mentally. I'm not going to do that. I'm, like me and Christian are talking about, sometimes people we know, it doesn't matter what we say or do, they're just stuck in this rut and they don't want to change. All they want to do is come and talk about their drama and how it sucks, and you say, oh, can you do, have you looked at, oh, no, I'm just going to, and so I've had to decide, I'm not going to be around these type of people. I'm, cutting off friends, because I'm not going to be putting up with that. And, that can be kind of daunting to say, I'm making a change for myself, and so I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And when it comes to me personally saying, I'm not going to be hanging around these people because of whatever their mindset or their behaviors, or just something I want to get away from, it's kind of overwhelming. It's kind of a difficult thing, but I have to do it for myself so that I can move past these wasted times, so that I could start focusing on my yeses. And like you're saying, to validate my yes by saying no, I'm validating that, one of my business partners that I'm no longer working with, I'm validating yes, I'm doing good in business, because I had to say, no, I'm not wasting my time doing business with somebody that really isn't productive. And then I wanted to touch on Fraser's comment before it gets too far up there about sometimes a list being overwhelming. And, I'm going to kind of relate to, I'm going to see if I can find this. A to-do list puts people off, and they're often become overwhelmed. But as you do them and score them off, at the end of the day, you become motivated in having achieved your tasks and goals. And I kind of look at, that overwhelming task in business, that I have been in business situations where, you don't want to get your workers to see that list, because that top level planning list can be long, can be very long. And a little trick that we would do in the office when I was working at the data center is, kind of what we're doing. We're breaking down the tasks to people that can do it, and we're going a little further. We're breaking it down to what we want as management. What do we want to see at the end of the day? Or even a little bit further, what can we expect to see before lunch or before the break? And I've even done that individually for myself to say, okay, what can I get done in an hour? I've got this list of 1,000 things that need to be done for this big giant project that I got that I realize is going to take 6 months to a year to get done. But if I just chunk it out into, I'm going to put 3 hours on this project today, and I'm going to try and accomplish this little short section of these tasks. I'm going to take 10 tasks and say, if I can get this done in half of the day, then I can start chipping away at that 1,000 list. It's not as intimidating because I'm not saying I got to do 1,000 tasks. I'm saying, hey, today, or maybe even 1 hour, I'm going to schedule 1 hour to get this one task done. And then I can do that hour, get the task done, mark it off and say, hey, look, I'm making progress. So, I mean, it depends on how you see it. But I've seen people where you give them a list at work and he's like, can you get this done? Maybe it's the whole week that we want this done. And they look at it and they never start. They always find something else to do because this project, they don't want to do it. But if you break it down and say, hey, can you get this done, these 3 things done before lunch? It's done. They come back after lunch and say, hey, can you get these 3 things done before you go home today? Oh, 3 things? I can get that done. And the next day and the next day. And then so that employee that is, more focused on the short-sightedness, they don't have to look at that big picture. I've had to do it myself so that I don't have to look at the big picture and get overwhelmed. If, I understood it works for an employee, if I'm working for myself, I should be able to do it for myself too.
Yeah. So I wanted to share one more thing before I end the recording. Let's see here. So we've been talking a lot about lists and goal setting to kind of to tie it back to this, the different ways of seeing and connected to 2 dots. I was listening and I was thinking, okay, I did a blab a while ago about smarter goal setting, right? And how to set different kinds of goals and set them clearly. And I think this PDF here I'm sharing with everyone will help you to do that. And I think one thing I would add on here is Rashim's suggestion of set to be goals. I do this myself every day. I'm going to be, compassionate. I'm going to be listening. I'm going to be, focused or whatever, however you want to be for that day. I think that's a really great thing to add to this. But this is really, okay, how do you set your goals? And let me see if I can share. So this form here will get you so you can download it, right? I'm going to go ahead and share the actual document so everyone can see it here. I share. But there's 3 basic types of goals in this model, and that's the outcome goal, a performance goal, and a process goal. Okay, I'm procrastinating because I'm trying to get the link here so you can see it on the screen.
You're doing good.
Okay.
So tell me more.
Tell me more. Right. So the outcome goal relates to the big picture. We've been talking about this, right? So on here, the smarter goal setting, just scroll down to under the letters and you'll see the 3 different kinds of goals. The outcome is the big picture goal. It generally also includes things that you don't control. Like, I want to be in the Fortune 500, or I want to win the NBA championship, right? It includes, that includes, whether the Fortune 500 is going to pay attention to you, whether you're going to get selected, how the other teams are going to perform. However, it's generally a very motivating goal, right? It's really the motivating force behind most of your other goals. So from there, you break it down, and it's generally a long-term goal. From there, you break it down into a performance goal. And these are the goals that you need to achieve to make that outcome goal even a possibility, right? Okay, we need to make $100,000 in sales in this quarter or per quarter. That gives you the greatest chance of success. And these are kind of like midterm goals. They can also be long-term goals as well. However, bringing it down to the idea that Rashim was sharing as well, as far as, okay, I'm going to do this every day. These are like the performance goals. What do you know you need to do every day to get the process goals? What do you know you need to do every day to get those performance goals? If I want to make $100,000 in sales, okay, what I need to make 10 calls a day. I need to get 50 leads per week, or something to land, 5 different clients per month or whatever. And so if you know what your performance goals are, that breaks it down into the day-to-day thing, right? Your priority, okay, I need to do this every day, right? And so for business, I mean, it could be very simple. I need to connect with a prospect every day. I need to put my message out there every day in one way or another on some kind of social media or article or whatever. I need to do this every day, and it makes it simple, right? Because when you take this process and do it, then you're basically stuck every day with process goals, right? And that's just simple to do, so it doesn't have to be complicated, And as you achieve each of the process goals, you're going to achieve your performance goal and ultimately achieve your outcome goal. So it becomes a series of simple, small steps that you can take, right? And get to the ultimate vision. So this process, this goal setting process, will allow you to have that far sight, that near sight, and actually, address the things immediately as well as in the long term. So I wanted to share that with you. It's the form is on the side, and I think, let me make sure it's in there. Yes, it has a thing for comments. So if this has helped you or hurted you or whatever, let me know. I really appreciate and want as much feedback as possible so I can do better next time. But I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. We can stay and hang out for a little while if you like. But I have process goals today too. I have a lot to do. But I'll at least hang out for at least another half an hour if you want. But I want to thank everybody for so much great contribution. Thank you, Rasheen, for joining us on the live stream. Thank you, Aaron, for joining us. Thank you, Frazier, as well. You're always contributing so much. And Cindy and Bill, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. So it's good to see you again. And Ola, I haven't seen you in a while either. So it's good to see you. And I appreciate everyone for joining us. So let me go ahead and end out this conversation by saying Charlene's little outro here, since I find it. Okay, so my name is Christian Williams. I was sitting in for Charlene Burke on her morning Mindset Cafe, and as she says, let's move forward with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, and grow our businesses. All right, thank you for joining me. Charlene will be back Monday. All right, everyone have an excellent day.